That Gearhead segment was presented by NASCAR. For all the latest insights and storylines and to find out when and where to watch, visit NASCAR.com. Guys, during the break, two big roster movement stories broke, one in the NBA and one in the NFL. In the NBA, Miles Turner is headed to the Milwaukee Bucks for a deal that's worth $107 million.
Wow.
And in the NFL...
Hold on. Can I stop you for just a second? I believe that Greg Cody will be titillated by what you're about to say right now, and I believe that Stugotz will also get very excited about this next bit of NFL news that you're about to deliver.
So the Dolphins, as you know, traded Jonnu Smith yesterday to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a big-time blockbuster deal that featured an All-Pro, move for an All-Pro.
Mike, may I stop you for just a second? Because I'd like Cody to try and guess who would make him enthusiastic to replace Jonnu Smith with, because the Dolphins have replaced Jonnu Smith with somebody I think of as better than Jonnu Smith.
I also have a quick update just broke from Shams. As part of this Miles Turner move, the Milwaukee Bucks are waiving Damian Lillard and stretching the remaining $113 million on his contract. This facilitates the move. Lillard is going to rehabilitate that torn Achilles.
Wow. Shams is having a week, huh?
It's actually been like an underwhelming NBA one, but back to your point and trying to get Greg Cody excited with this.
I believe
very surprising addition.
believe that the name that you're about, I'm looking to get an instantaneous reaction from Greg Cody, because I believe that what Mike's about to say is a talent that the Dolphins have not had at tight end since maybe like Keith Jackson or Eric Green.
Okay.
Going back forever. When he says the name.
Randy McMichael would
Randy
like a word.
McMichael would love a word.
I think that
I would take Randy McMichael at his peak over this one because we have
Jordan
questions
Cameron
about this
would
one.
like a word.
Guys.
Dude,
I think if you
Jordan
gave Greg 100 guesses, he wouldn't
He
guess
wouldn't
this
get it,
person's name.
but I think it's why it's going to excite him, and also it might trouble him. But
Yes.
do you want to take any guesses?
I would like to take a guess. George Kittle.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a great name. No, this dude was actually retired. This dude was retired. Tom Pelissero is reporting that the Dolphins are bringing in Darren Waller.
Wow. I thought it was going to be Joe Rose.
What a story that would be.
Joe Rose.
Greg, you know, if this guy was still playing, you'd be writing a Go Get 'Em column when it comes to Darren Waller.
Darren Waller does not excite me quite as much as George Kittle would have, if I'm being
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. I'm glad we had you here for this analysis.
One of the best in the game,
I'm
sure.
glad that
I
we
mean,
have a
you're the-
pioneer of football coverage. He's covered football for 50 years.
Okay,
yes, no, George Kittle is better than Darren Waller. You got me. You got me. Dead to rights. You cornered me, and I'm sorry that I got you all enthused.
This
and then,
guy over here was overselling Darren Waller.
You did make it seem like Gronk was coming back.
Right,
seriously.
yeah.
Darren Waller had an all-time season.
He had 2 1,000-yard seasons. He was a very good player.
He was awesome.
Yes.
He tailed off after the move to New York and then retired and has had a bizarre retirement.
All right.
He had music come out, I think.
Hey, he's a rapper now.
It was a high-profile breakup.
A couple of things on Darren Waller. Please get me some of the specifics. This is a troubled individual, and his public breakup evidently was embarrassing enough to him. He also talked about various, weaknesses that he has had in terms of, stimulant usage, and he has talked about concussions and depressions. He is a person who is open about his vulnerabilities and his demons, and he was supposed to be something with the New York Giants and Daniel Jones that he was not. He was that with the Raiders. This is a singularly talented physical human being. The issues with him are not physical.
No, but there was a huge drop-off in production, and he was marred by injury there, so I do think that there are some physical concerns, and we also don't know what kind of shape, mental or physical, he might be after the time away from football. But if you're looking at available options this late into the season, you just traded Jonnu Smith, you look at your roster, everyone has questions about what that tight end room looks like. It doesn't cost them much, and it's pretty inspired to give Darren Waller a call. He can make an immediate impact if he's, quite honestly, if he's half as productive, is a great move.
That's what he did his last 3 years, though. I mean,
Be half as productive
yeah,
as
he was half as productive as his first couple
That's
of
still
years.
an upgrade
yes.
over the tight end.
Wait a minute, though. Come on now. What the Giants and Daniel Jones were doing and the injury combination, I'm looking at a person, I don't have this wrong when I say this is as physically gifted a tight end as there is in the sport. That he was unguardable with the Raiders. He was their primary weapon. Everyone knew he was their primary weapon, and he was still dominant. Now, I don't know if his his body has broken down since then. But this is a player whose skill level I regard as higher than Jonnu Smith's. Now, he might not be in that point of his career,
Right.
but I think of this as a better overall player, a more dominant player. His best is better than Jonnu Smith's best. You put him in this system because it wasn't in this
Well, this system is important, right? At his best, he had 197 catches over 2 years.
Physically,
God.
yes. No,
That's
lunacy.
crazy.
I know.
Lunacy.
Yes.
But what the reason that I was disappointed by Cody's reaction is for 2 years, this was Kittle-ish. Like this was in the realm. Like
This was one of the best in the league,
You
yes.
being
When it came to
underwhelmed-
production, surpassed.
You being underwhelmed by this human being like caught me off guard because
Okay.
this is a
Yeah.
monster.
Well, in fairness to
physical
Greg,
talent.
though, he's been retired for a year and hasn't had a good year since 2020. I mean,
Understood.
Yeah.
And he's in his early 30s, right?
32,
He
yeah.
retired early, and I don't know. The reason he's available to you is because he's a cocktail of physical and mental issues. That's why he
Right.
was out of the sport. But the production that you got from him 4 years ago, before the concussions, he plays very physically, and they were putting him in a lot of positions where he was getting dinged a lot. He's bigger than everybody. Like, he's running through a secondary,
Correct, yes.
and there is no one in the secondary nearly as big as he is.
I believe he said that the reason that he stopped playing and retired is because one day he just woke up and he's like, they're playing me at fullback. Like, what am I doing with my life? I
Right.
don't want to continue playing like this.
This system will either be a rejuvenator or not, but it is a perfect place for somebody who's got high-end physical gifts. You guys said Randy McMichael, and yes, Randy McMichael was a nice tight end taken in the 4th round. Keith Jackson and Eric Green were prime free agents trying to change the position. So was this.
Yeah, I mean, he was number 1 receptions for his position in 2020. It's a top 15 season all time at the position. George Kittle in 2018 had a pretty massive one there too, so I don't want to shortchange him. But yeah, he was really productive for a very limited offense. And we saw last year, finally you got production out of that position. Historically, it's a position that you could always count on for whatever reason. I think the reasons were Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the outside. They didn't really use the tight end all that much until last year, and Jonnu Smith became a Pro Bowler by finding all that space underneath.
I think I'm appropriately reacting to somebody his age with his off-field issues whose only 2 notable seasons were 5 and 6 years ago.
Right.
I mean, it's a signing better than not signing him. Don't get me wrong there, and he could work out well and big, but the odds are against it. That's all. I think you're.
If there's a place
overselling
where
him.
he's going to flourish, though, I think Dan's point is this is the
I'm
place.
just
This is
talking
the offense.
A physical
Right.
talent. This is a perfect rehab center for whatever it is that he might or might not have left. I don't know what he's got left, but I would say that if you can do it with Gesicki, you can do it with this person.
But I think Greg is right. He had the appropriate reaction to Darren Waller coming back. It's not Antonio Gates. It's not Tony Gonzalez.
I find his skepticism there refreshing because Greg has never seen a Pro Bowl name that he hasn't liked before, but there are plenty of questions about this player at this age and that physical state, no doubt.
Highlighting his younger usage of drugs and stuff. He began abusing oxycodone at 15, started drinking at 16, and his addiction escalated to the point where he was spending $100 a day on pills, overdosed on those, had a lot of cocaine use in his time. That's why his time got cut short with the Ravens, because he was on all these pills, and we didn't know what he was going to be with supreme talent and then that off the field stuff.
But Greg, you would concede, given what their options are at the positions and the fact that they just used Jonnu Smith to reacquire Minkah Fitzpatrick, it's a pretty inspired idea from this front office to bring him into camp and see what he's got left.
It's worth the gamble.
The thing that I would wonder about, as I always do with the reclamation projects that have an assortment of drug issues, throwing them into this particular cauldron of temptation in South Florida, when you have a history of escapism or depression or darkness or
if you have
drugs.
cocaine in your past, Miami's not the place to
I
be.
mean, you can
played
get
in-
drugs anywhere.
He played it, yes, and he played in Vegas and New York.
Correct, but I
Vegas.
would ask you to give me all the reclamation projects that are coming from drug pasts that 4 and 5 years later, when they are talking about the things that he's talked about publicly, whether his heart's in the game. He is a player who feels like he has been spent by whatever the enduring of the last 10 years have been, both being in pain in that sport and killing the pain in that sport. One of the things that I wanted to mention to Tony, as Lewis still wanders around the premises here complaining about how tired he is from wrestling Tony. Can you guys look up for me the bar fight that Uriah Faber had at one point when you underestimate who these fighters are and what it is that they're training? Because Lewis was talking in the eating area about how physically granite these fighters are. And one of the reasons I've always loved the mixed martial arts is because my initial fascination with whatever it was foreign combat was the stories of guys who would sharpen their shins by kicking a tree over and over again until their shins were so callous that they could feel no pain and only administer pain because they'd done so many reps of just turning their body to rocks.
No, that was Jean-Claude Van Damme in Kickboxer.
He stole it. That was cultural appropriation from Jean-Claude Van Damme. He stole it from the mystics who did the martial arts before him.
Mike is
But
right,
look
yeah.
up the details for me
Banger
on
of a movie.
Uriah Faber, the street fight he got into, because I'm pretty sure he beat up 11 guys. I believe it was him.
No, there's a reason why I picked his name. He had was it in Bali, a Bali bar fight in which he and one of his friends were fighting back to back, I think.
No, he didn't want to. He told us the story. I think it might be in the system somewhere. He was just running from people, and they kept chasing him, and he kept having to beat them up one after another.
And I'm sitting next to this guy. Tiny dude.
Tiny.
Very tiny dude.
Small.
But at his peak of his powers, though, in the pound-for-pound discussion.
He was a dog.
Yeah. Actually, I had a great rivalry with Mike Brown, who's one of the great trainers.
Do you have for me the details on that report? And I want to get to your other report as well. Mina Kimes is going to join us here in a little bit to ask her about Darren Waller and other football things.
Yeah, the Miles Turner thing, Dan, that is of more consequence, I think. That shakes up an East that is already kind of upside down because of injuries and everything, and we didn't expect Milwaukee to kind of be buyers. I don't really think it was maybe talked about. Certainly, if you follow the Bucks specific Twitter accounts, this stretching and waving Damian Lillard thing, but Miles Turner leaving a team that is already hampered by their own Achilles injury to go to Milwaukee, it does sweeten the pot a little bit for Giannis.
I do think, though, that it is interesting, and how could it not be, Stugotz, to accelerate our hunger at analyzing who can Game of Thrones their way to the top of the crown, that the first two spots that he would go conversationally are Giannis and Miles Turner. And, hey, Dame Lillard, nice seeing you. See you later.
That was supposed to be the piece.
See you later,
Right.
see you later,
Yeah,
Damian
Dame
Lillard. Remember when that was going to run the East, and now it's been traded, or it's been moved around in the roster for Miles Turner, a player who exasperates me, by the way, because
He should be better.
Miles Turner is always on the trade block, and I'm always wondering why he's always on the trade block. And I'm always wondering why he's on the trade block the same way I also used to wonder why is Brook Lopez always on the trade block. And then I see Brook Lopez win a championship when he's used correctly as the seventh guy. Miles Turner, I'm sitting there waiting in the finals for him to prove that I'm right about Miles Turner. And in games 6 and 7, he proved that I'm wrong about Miles Turner. He ended his Pacers career by not showing up when they needed him to give him something with Halliburton out, and he couldn't give him any rebounds, and he couldn't do anything other
just
than
parlayed it into 113
other
million.
than wander around the court and score 6 points.
At this point, he's a bit of a role player. At $107 million, though, might have that's not bad. He has some value, and I do find it funny. Yeah, he was perpetually on the trade block, which is why I think he protected himself this time around. He has a trade kicker in his contract. He gets a 15% bonus if he gets moved. He's sick of the trade rumors too.
When you talk about keeping Giannis and the Bucks doing that, obviously it's his decision, but is the pot sweetened with Miles Turner, losing Brook Lopez and adding Miles Turner?
They didn't seem like the reports were that this wasn't a team that was going to be buying.
Right.
And they made a $100 million investment. Miles
Right.
Turner is a player that can help them. They've made a decision on Damian Lillard. It does seem like they've got some direction, which is, if you're Miami, what is the direction? At least you see all these other teams in the East making moves, and it's very clear that they're going into their offseason with a plan, where other teams are just apparently just treading water
Because
again.
the East is wide open. I mean, the Hawks are making moves.
It's weird.
yeah.
It's a weird year to just decide now you're going to tread water again.
You have to think that anything the Bucks do right now, anything, is strategic with the idea this is going to help us re-sign
I don't
Giannis,
want to
right?
skip past, though, what we're doing here, which is Dame Lillard is now officially a liability. I understand that he's been injured. I understand that people get awfully forgetful, and athletes will tell you all the time, just stay out of the training room. Even your teammates will forget if you're living in there. That happened fast, man. Damian Lillard was the piece, and now Portland is young and better, good at defense, gets out from under what that would have been if you had it on your contract with an Achilles tear at $50 million a year.
But you look at that whole trade in its entirety, and it's kind of garbage on both sides.
Trade, dude.
It's bad on both sides.
The Heat players had some value, some of the players that were talked about over there. But Damian Lillard, I don't think it's one of those things. Like, you could look at it, certainly what happened in Milwaukee. They just have an in-season tournament win to their name. You could look at it and say, well, Miami avoided disaster there. But I think it's more nuanced than that. There were a lot of things going on in Damian Lillard's personal life at the time. Sure. And he did not want to be in Milwaukee.
He wasn't in shape either. He told Doc Rivers, and then his body broke down from not being in shape.
And he wasn't in shape because of what was going on in his life. And all of a sudden, he shows up in a place that he didn't want to go to. He thought his franchise that he gave everything to would send him to the place that they wanted. And they decided to make an example out of him when he did everything the right way. I don't think it would have gone the same way had Damian Lillard come to Miami. I actually think it would have certainly helped Jimmy Butler, and it certainly would have given Miami what they needed, but the stats speak for themselves.
Well, you can't know, though, whether someone would have gotten injured on your watch or not. I'm more interested in the end of his career because his value is now past its prime. Whatever that comes back as, even if it can shoot,
it will come back as a bargain.
He'll always be able to shoot, and he's gonna have to get accustomed to being a role player. And we've seen in the NBA in this century, Dallas won a championship taking these former superstars and making them role players. And maybe that's going to be the future for Damian Lillard because when you consider that injury and what was such a big part of his game was how much quicker he was.
Okay, but the thing that you guys are doing, that it's okay. Like, I get it, right? It's all about now. The trade just happened with Miles Turner, and Giannis is interesting. But we're talking about a league superstar who that's the announcement that his career as a star is over. Yeah. That announcement of we got to get Miles Turner because the thing we were doing to keep Giannis, that's a spectacular failure, and it's a failure none of us saw coming that has at the end of it. And also, Dame, you're pretty much done. You're not a marquee name in this league. LeBron's still around and Steph's still around. You're not.
We probably would have been there before the Achilles, honestly. He just wasn't considered that. He hadn't flashed it. And I do think that you can tie the injuries to the conditioning and whether or not one franchise would have taken care of his body more, but I don't think it's the end of Damian Lillard's story. I think
I agree with you,
He's
Mike.
one of the five greatest shooters that we've seen all time. I know it's a mental hurdle for him to clear, to have to change his game and maybe become a role player off the bench. It's a spot-up shooter, but that guy can shoot forever.
With the landscape of all these Achilles injuries in the East, Stugotz brought up an interesting point that I wrote down earlier today. I think the Hawks might be the best team in the East right now.
Oh my God,
that's crazy to say.
It's a scary, crazy thing to say. But you get
no, Dan. The East is so bad. There are so many injuries.
Guys, the Knicks are probably the best team in the East right now.
Right?
And the Cavs, they won 68 games. They're cooked.
No,
they're
they're
frauds.
cooked.
And look, imagine
They're
how
not
bad the
cooked.
Heat are
Don't do
that they
that to
got
the Cavs.
smoked by
Don't
the
do that
Cavs
to
who were
the
frauds.
Cavs.
But
Don't
I
do
will
that.
bring up this:
Magic.
the Hawks add Porzingis. They add the New Orleans 2026 first-round pick. That's going to be a really good pick next year. They've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker on a side and trade. They got Luke Kennard, another shooter, on a trade.
You did something to Cleveland that's wrong.
What was that?
That's not right.
And
Dismiss
Orlando.
them. What's
I think
wrong about it?
Orlando's going to be nice.
Cleveland,
with
Orlando.
Bain.
But your point is, look at Atlanta. They were a total afterthought in the conference,
And now they're in it.
battling it out with Miami in that play-in range. And now all of a
Exactly
sudden
right.
they have a path and they're doing something. I have no friggin' clue what Miami is
You
doing.
add all those guys to Trae Young, to Jalen Johnson, who's going to be incredible coming up, to Dyson Daniels, probably second or third in Defensive Player of the Year. Like, Atlanta's building pieces, and if they get that number one pick next year, if the Pelicans are that bad, all of a sudden things are starting to rotate in the way that Atlanta's good.
Here come the
made
Hawks.
moves.
Yeah.
Even Chicago.
Just keep an eye on 'em.
Everyone, it's not just the top. Everyone around the bottom and middle of the pack is making moves in the East, and the Heat are just standing still. It's
If
bizarre.
the Heat would have lost,
Standing pat, some are saying.
attaboy.
Hey.
If the Heat would have lost to Atlanta and had the same pick, New Orleans would have called the Heat to make the same trade for Derek Queen, and the Heat would have had a number one pick next year that could be a top 3, top 2 pick.
Mina Kimes is going to join us in a moment, and I'm laughing on the inside at the idea that I keep trying to get you guys to talk to Damian Lillard about Damian Lillard.
We're
and
talking
you'd
Hawks.
rather talk about the Hawks. Like, there's no
team in
conversation
the
that you
East.
would rather have
He's not going to play for a year.
less
Well,
than
that's
the
to talk
one
about.
about Damian Lillard and what what this means. You want to throw this through the frame of Miles Turner when what this means is the announcement from Milwaukee that they're out on the experiment of Giannis and Damian Lillard can ever be anything here as an architectural blueprint.
What's the most aggressive timeline for Damian Lillard to return at his age from that injury? I mean, maybe he has something to say.
27.
He's done as a star player. He will be a name, but it'll be a faded name. He'll be able to hit jump shots, but if you take away his quickness, he's no longer Damian Lillard.
Right. I think the conversation that we're having is what does this do to the landscape of the East? And I don't think Damian Lillard has a damn thing to say about the East next year. He's injured.
No.
He's out.
He's 35 years old.
I'm just pointing out how quickly things change. It wasn't but a couple of years ago.
We're just pointing out the Hawks have a shot.
Yeah,
boy.
you guys, that's all you're doing. Mina Kimes is next. I wish you guys could see the negotiations with Stugotz and Greg Cody during the break as Stugotz tried to become a presenting sponsor on Greg Cody's podcast, The Greg Cody Show, featuring Greg Cody, brought to you by God Bless Football as presenting sponsor.
We're in negotiations.
We have enough bills that have piled up that need to be paid first. Greg Cody's not going to be the first one to get God Bless Football money.
I like the we there. I mean,
We are owed money from the episodes that aired on Meadowlark that you were paid for that I did, that you did not. So we are owed money.
Whoa.
thank you for doing this.
Turmoil.
Very
Controversy.
nice. Yes.
So maybe it won't be a presenting sponsor soon.
Title sponsorship.
We'll see what the judge decides.
We will have the judge in the next couple of days to make some rulings. Mina Kimes is with us now. I was disappointed earlier with Greg Cody's reaction to the Darren Waller signing and him being generally unimpressed with Darren Waller physically and just complaining in general that Darren Waller is not anything special.
Mina, let me say one thing. Le Batard was talking about them signing Darren Waller as if he were Darren Waller's agent.
Right.
All I'm saying is I was appropriately standoffish in my enthusiasm based on a guy his age with his off-field issues whose last great season was 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, Greg, I don't know. There's such an impressive track record of older players in their 30s coming back years after they were good and being dominant in the NFL. So shocking that you're underwhelmed by this. Dan, were you whelmed by it? Were you overwhelmed?
Dan was
by
whelmed.
it? Like, what
He
are
was.
we?
Properly whelmed.
I was appropriately
Not
whelmed.
watching football 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah, but Mina, if we told Greg that Kellen Winslow Sr. was coming back, he would have been more excited. He would have been.
Well, but
Yes.
here's the thing, though. I believe the Giants were a place where every talented person went to die over the last 3 years.
I think if he was younger, I could maybe work up a little bit more excitement. With all due respect to his rapping career, I believe it was, as you guys, I'm sure, remember maybe the most embarrassing music video of all time that he dropped after him and Kelsey Plum split. You remember this,
Yes,
right, Dan?
yes.
Yep.
Never won. It's hard for me to get excited about this. It's also hard for me to get excited about it specifically for the Miami Dolphins because they seem to be leaning in, committing to the bit that they're not a physical football team when everybody for now 2 or 3 years has been saying the one thing this team needs to get better at is running the ball. And instead, they go out and they get a tight end last year, Jonnu Smith, who I thought was excellent, not in terms of he's not like a real blocker, but he was getting those yards after the catch underneath. They're like going away from it, and it feels like they're leaning even more into their identity, but we already know that identity has not worked out over the long term.
What are the things from the last couple of days that have been most interesting to you?
I mean, the trade was really interesting, the Steelers-Dolphins trade, because you don't really see this type of trade that much in the NFL, which is essentially two teams betting against each other that the players they are acquiring are better, right? Because it wasn't like a huge salary dump, although I think that was a big incentive for Miami, was getting Jalen Ramsey's contract off their books. And by the way, a success. So I know Dolphins fans maybe don't have the highest of enthusiasms right now, but that to me was a success because we thought that they would have to eat that contract. But, they felt Minka Fitzpatrick was a good fit for their defense. The Steelers felt Jalen Ramsey was a better fit. We'll see who's right. I actually think both sides, from a football standpoint, have a case for going after those particular players, but I think it's a really interesting talent bet.
Greg, could I not make the argument that the Dolphins just traded away 2 of their top 5 names?
You could make that argument, particularly since Jonnu Smith had such a career year last year. It's sort of transforming his reputation in a way.
Mina, is Jalen Ramsey a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's got a good case of it. I would have to take a look at sort of the threshold for corners, but multiple All-Pros, Pro Bowls off the top of my head, Super Bowl appearance, many years where he was a top 3 player at his position. Usually that sort of resume does lend itself to the Hall of Fame.
We were talking, though, about interceptions as a bad stat to use for DBs. What do you use, and who do you regard as the best 3 going now?
The best 3 corners in football? Well, so interceptions definitely matter if you get a lot of them. I think if you don't, it matters less, if that makes sense. And so, they tend to regress year to year. They tend to not be sticky. They also depend on scheme. Are you playing a defense where you have eyes on the football, maybe play a little less man coverage, have an opportunity to make plays off the ball, you're playing behind a good pass rush, all of that matters. The truth is, and this is hard for me to say as a numbers person, there really aren't good stats for quarterback play, right? I can look at like the average passer rating and I'll consider those things, but because it's so dependent on scheme and what's being asked of the players, it's really hard to make broad, sweeping generalizations about corners based purely on numbers. As far as you ask who are the best 3, Pat Surtain, easy. Derek Stingley Jr.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay,
Yep.
we're doing a list.
Are you doing this in order? You want to go 3, 2, 1, or did you already ruin it?
No, I was going 1, 2, 3. I think. I mean, he was the defensive player.
You
I
stopped
voted
at
for him
Stingley, yeah.
Okay, so Derek Stingley Jr.
Thank you.
This is hard. I know I'm leaving somebody really obvious out. I love Marlon. McDuffie is really good. Okay, fine. Give me Trey McDuffie. This day could do long.
Official pick, right.
I don't know if that's my official.
Mina, you mentioned scheme, and a lot of people were pointing to scheme as to why there was a huge issue with Minkah Fitzpatrick's on-field performance last year. He really dropped back. Yeah. PFF had him ranked 44th. He's a confusing player. A lot of Dolphins fans were confused he was bad. He goes to Pittsburgh, all of a sudden ball hawk, making a huge big-time impact, and then that same uniform gets used differently, and there's a huge drop-off in production. Is Minkah Fitzpatrick good?
He's good. Yes, I do think he's good. He was not good this last year in Pittsburgh, and his play has been up and down. But I do think in the right defense, he can return to form. And I like Miami's defense better for him than Steelers' defense for the reason you described, Mike. That's a defense where he was basically only asked to play deep safety. Miami, with their defense coordinator, who I think is quite good, by the way, Anthony Weaver, more split safety, so he'll play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. I think there's more opportunities for him to be versatile, fly around the field. So I like this for him, too.
What about Jalen Ramsey? Is he going to move to safety, the long-rumored move to safety? Or is he still too good at corner? Because his PFF grades, that's all I really can consult here, were pretty good at corner.
Yeah, well, I still think he's a good corner. I think there's a reason why Jalen Ramsey is a really, really smart player. He's really, really aware of his skill set, and I think there's a reason why he has been talking about moving to safety. He understands that, it's hard to play quarterback at a high level when you get old because just athleticism and the things that are asked of you, turning your back to the quarterback. I do think he can play more slot, maybe safety, closer to the line of scrimmage. He's definitely not going to play the Minkah Fitzpatrick role, though, in Pittsburgh. So anyone who says that is dead wrong.
With this week's trade in mind, particularly adding Jonnu Smith, is Aaron Rodgers in a good spot right now to make believers of his doubters?
Time to mow through some colors.
Yes.
Mow.
Yes.
Colors.
Not really callers, but we're just
going
going
to those colors like there's nobody business.
Mow
your boat.
Nobody's business.
That doesn't make sense.
Nobody's calling.
Mow
That doesn't make any
buddy.
sense.
Who's calling?
Welcome to Billy's experience.
Yeah.
The Billy experience. He's tired of listening to you talk, and so he's going to throw some grenades your way.
Mina, we haven't seen the full
She
video.
didn't answer Greg's question.
But should Shelly really be this mad at Ace?
She was mad at Huda, and that's the problem, Billy.
Crazy.
Why wasn't she mad at Ace? Double standards, anyone?
The music's too loud.
This is very loud, Billy.
More exciting season to
admire
watch.
this, too.
Love Island or Hard Knocks in season following the NFC East.
Why?
Love Island. Come on, next question.
The music's too loud, Billy. It needs to be quieter. Turn it down
Turn
a
it
little
up.
bit. It's too
Well,
loud.
turn your headsets down.
Otherwise, you can't. That doesn't help.
Mislabeled on the board, it seems.
Okay.
Says they were Ace.
Thank you for a whole lot of nothing. Greg Cody, did you have something?
Well, he asked it already.
I asked a
Right.
question and
Didn't get an answer.
Shenanigans
Right. Yes.
began.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
Aaron
sorry.
Rodgers. Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, because he turned doubters into believers.
Yes.
I am skeptical that he is going to return to anywhere close to the form of a few years ago. Can he be competent? Sure. Can the Steelers' offense be a run-first offense? You got Jonnu Smith as an underneath option? Sure. But I think at this point in his career, Aaron Rodgers is not Aaron Rodgers of 2021.
Mina, Stu, and a car phone. What's going to happen with T.J. Watt?
I think he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't understand why the Steelers would make all of these other moves where they're clearly all in on this season
Right.
and then trade away their best defensive player. It doesn't make sense.
Is the jig up with the Dolphins offense, or can they still be good?
It's the chig up. I haven't heard that phrase in a minute.
I know, really. Old timey.
Jealous.
I think
I am.
I think the jig. Why am I so uncomfortable saying that? Is it offensive? It feels offensive, and I don't know why.
It should be.
You think
Yeah.
the jig is? Now you've got me
jig is up.
scared of it.
Yes.
You guys have got me scared of it for no reason, and it's just the jig. But I don't think any of us know what the jig is or what the origins
It's
of
up, though.
jig are.
It's
It
up in the
feels
offense.
It is
weird.
up.
Yeah,
feels
it used,
weird.
it used to be a little dance. Like if you were doing a jig, you were like dancing. That's all I can
think-
say.
I feel like a jig is the best word to describe my dancing style. I think it is up. Yes, I think that everybody has been begging this offense to become more diverse and become better at running and become more physical, and they just aren't investing in that.
Drake May, what is he?
Good player. I thought played excellent last year despite being in the worst situation in football. Very optimistic about him and his arrow pointing up.
Best young quarterback nobody's talking about.
Ooh, that nobody's talking about. It's hard. We all talk about all the quarterbacks all
Young,
the time.
but young. Or
Why
not
is it
talking
Cam
about
Ward?
enough.
Why
Not
is it
talking
Cam
about
Ward?
enough.
Why is it Cam Ward?
Cam Ward, the number 1 overall
Yeah.
draft pick.
I haven't heard enough people talk about it.
That's actually true. We don't really talk about Cam Ward, so that is actually a pretty good answer. I'll throw out one. Caleb Williams. I think I went back and watched some of his games last year, and I was really impressed with what I saw. I understand, statistically a horrible season, some really difficult performances, but I think the talent was there.
Will Carolina make the playoffs?
I don't think so. They would have to win the NFC South, and I've got either Tampa or Atlanta.
Fool's gold, though, with Bryce Young. Typically, when we see young teams close out the season and a young quarterback close out the season the way that they did, it's usually a good indicator for a future season.
Optimistic about Bryce Young, less optimistic about that pass rush and pass defense.
Breakout wide receiver this year.
Ooh, I think he's already broken out, but I went back and watched Lad McConkey.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Dude, he's so good.
He's so good.
He's so fast.
This is the year he becomes man McConkey.
Number 100 on the
Like
NFL's
that.
top 100
That was for you, Stu.
players.
I like that, Mina.
That was
I
good.
like that. I like
get
that.
An exciting
I make eye
American white.
contact with you when I said that.
Yes, I did. I looked
tried
up. Yeah.
Tried to do it in like your voice a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I haven't used that one. That's fresh.
Only the best stuff for us.
Yes.
She does it.
For me.
I wonder why she hasn't used that elsewhere. It can't be because they rejected it out of hand anywhere else on earth.
You loved it. What are you talking about? Man McConkey.
CJ Stroud, give me a
Glad he comes
reason.
in.
Give me a reason that he was bad last year, other than pressure up the middle.
I thought obviously pressure was the biggest reason, but I thought you saw his accuracy wane in moments. Granted, because of that pressure, but you really saw how bad offensive line play can also eventually lead to bad quarterback play separate from the offensive line. Even when there was a clean pocket, he looked skittish at times.
Your best thoughts on Pablo Torre finds out almost finding collusion, but being screwed by an arbiter who got it wrong.
So close.
I thought it was a great story, a great podcast, and my first thought was, oh my God, this NFLPA guy, the Stugotz was strong in him. Oh my goodness, the player head of the treader, the head of the PA.
Yeah, fall guy.
Terrible look.
Fall guy. Fall guy.
Okay.
Is Bill Callahan so skilled as an offensive line coach that it can mitigate some of the issues along that offensive line to help guarantee Cam Ward the most possible success?
I think so. I think, though, more than just Bill Callahan, they bring in Dan Moore Jr., who is a competent left tackle. I think everybody is sliding to their correct position. You bring in Zeitler. So I think the investments they've made in players, just competent veteran players.
Faster.
Is Trevor Lawrence good?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the jig up in San Francisco?
Has anyone looked up that cap phrase. It is not up. I think that they're going to bounce back this
Has
year.
anyone looked up how many people Uriah Faber was fighting in Bali?
Countless.
They said hundreds.
Yeah, countless. People breaking bottles over people's heads.
Bruce
and
Lee
him
movie.
running,
That, by the
running
way,
barefoot.
is Billy just playing Uriah Faber's laugh instead of Uriah Faber telling us that
Perfect.
story. It's
It's
all
all
he's
California
got.
kid.
Yeah.
It's all he's got in the system. A team that's going to be less good than people think it is next year.
Chiefs.
I am not super high on the Chargers. People are higher than me.
Stugotz major penalty, 5 minutes for talking about the Chiefs.
A team that's going to be a lot better than people expect it to be.
I think the Jaguars. I know I was like, about Trevor Lawrence, but I think they're going to be. I think that offense is going to be pretty good.
BTJ is fun.
The next
So good.
disposable position in terms of value that's going to get cut the way that running back has been cut.
It changes constantly because football is changing constantly. I would say it's less valuable, but I think maybe the interior of the defensive line has been climbing and edge has gone down a teeny bit in my mind.
She's the host of the Mina Kimes Show, starring Lenny. She is Mina Kimes, NFL analyst on ESPN. We miss you, young lady. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye, guys. Man, McConkey. I'm going to use that again.
Terrible.
Look, every crew's got roles. On a team, on a group text, at a watch party. You've got the stat nerd, the vibes guy, the one who thinks they're the coach, and then there's the real MVP, the person that brings the cooler. And what's in that cooler? If it's not Miller Lite, I'm checking the roster. It's the 50th anniversary of Miller Lite. 50 years of showing up in big moments. Post-game tailgates, NBA watch parties, road trips to road games where you swore the refs were out to get you. Through it all, that clean, crisp Miller Lite taste just gets it done. 96 calories, 3.2 carbs. It's light, but it doesn't tap out early. You're over there arguing over who the GOAT is, shouting about NIL deals. Someone's grilling. Miller Lite is always there, playing its role to perfection. Brewed for taste, simple ingredients, a legend since 1975, and still a first ballot Hall of Famer in my cooler. Miller Lite. Great taste. 96 calories. Go to MillerLite.com/Dan to find delivery options near you, or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere they sell beer. Cheers to 50 years of Miller Lite. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Damian Lillard waved. I'm not going to allow you guys to just skip past that to tell me about Miles Turner when I've got a timeline.
And the Hawks.
Well, you can't tell the Miles Turner story without telling the Damian Lillard.
Damian
How about
Lillard
those Hawks?
waved. Now there's more action there. What's happening? Chris
The
Haynes.
trade that doesn't stop trading.
Sounds like Pat's gonna go whale watching now, huh?
This is a point for standing pat, by the way. I will say, because things are opening up a little bit, but Chris Haynes is reporting that Giannis is not happy about Damian Lillard getting waived. Now, you could wonder what that's all about, because it's not like Giannis was counting on Damian Lillard to be there, or you can piece tea leaves together, Stugotz, and I know you like to do this.
Yeah.
We know from the Damian drama over in Portland, Chris Haynes is Damian Lillard's guy. What if Damian Lillard fed this to make Damian Lillard look a little bit better? Oh, Giannis misses me. And he co-signs that with Giannis, which is the superstar doing the superstar thing when he wants to get out there. And also, trades from 8 years ago that actually happened today. Dario Saric and Jonas Valanciunas got moved for one another.
Wow, still playing, huh?
Stu, can you name where either guy is?
Valanciunas, I think, was with Sacramento.
Yeah, there's a good bet. If you're not sure where someone went, guess Sacramento.
And Saric, the Suns, is 2 teams ago in Denver. I saw him wandering around with that mustache on the bench of the Nuggets this offseason. And
Collecting money.
Yes.
To hide that.
Did not even get in the game once.
Juju, thank you for joining us. I know you saw the voting, much different than the fan voting. Caitlin Clark voted the 9th best guard in the sport, according to her peers.
Yeah, I think it's some context that has to be added there. You feel me? Caitlin has missed 7 games due to injury. And as we all know, your best ability is your availability. So I think that's what's happening with the players. A smidget of hate, I can't lie, a smidget of hate to be number 9. I would go about like number 5 or 6. But yeah, her missing games played a big part in that.
We were talking about transactions among the men. How about Vegas and Dallas? Surprising. I hate it when players are traded and are totally surprised by it. Had no idea it was coming.
Right. That was a big shocker. Nalissa Smith traded to the Vegas Aces, and we all know her girlfriend Dejanay Carrington also plays with her in the wings. So they were both blindsided. They both took to Twitter and told us how heartbroken they are. But it's not a bad thing to get to play with Asia Wilson right now. And the Dallas is more in the rebuild stage because they got a lot of big players over there, but not necessarily a lot of space to play them. So I think it's a good trade, but still definitely heartbroken when you got to leave your shorty.
That one hurts there, but you're saying you're putting the spin on it, but I get to play with Asia. It's like
that right there is also probably one of the other places where we won't get to full equality amongst both leagues.
Thank you, Mike. I'm glad you brought that back.
Can you imagine Valanciunas and Saric are dating one another? Oh, what? This is awkward.
I can't imagine it. I'd like to imagine it.
Right. And Mike, you took a little bit of steam earlier. We had this conversation about a month back with the girls from the Jocular podcast, Adam McKay's new podcast with Tien Tran and Katie Kershaw, where I asked them, when am I allowed to dislike a WNBA player? Now I have a little more context than you have with this Angel. Like I see Marina Mabury, I'd be like, I don't like her. Can I just not like her vocally?
There you go.
You feel me? So
I appreciate that perspective.
I definitely agree.
And I also appreciate you falling for Dan's trap of making me an Angel Reese hater when I just used her as an example. But that's true equality. To be able to irrationally hate an athlete regardless of gender, that's when we know we're even.
Roz has just sent me a text that says that Angel Reese, Eastern Conference Player of the Week. Please show this to Ryan.
Sweet. Can you clarify? Number one, it's Mike. And number two, I don't hate Angel Reese, but now I do.
24 points, 17 rebounds, 7 assists in her last game, too. Bad timing on that one. But we all know my brother Mike don't hate her at all. Until now.
Thank you.
MAGA Mike Mondays is where we're headed. Top 5 handles earlier in the show. Surely you had opinions on that list. What did you think of AI climbing into a bracket where he could be found with Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, that inspired me to make my own top 5 NBA handle list ever of all time.
Maybe we can get to Greg Cody's list of one, maybe one handle. No?
One handle. I can,
Oh,
you're
right.
You're asking
okay,
nicely.
at the end, we'll close the episode. We'll get the big finish of the top one Greg Cody handle. Thank you for doing that.
Do you have it still? I mean,
it's written down.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, it's committed to memory.
All right, go ahead, Juju. It's a lot to remember, as you know. So many.
OLI Stevie franchise.
Tier 4, according to that bogus list.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Number 5, Jamal Crawford.
Wow. Jay crossover.
Salute.
Tier 2.
Number 4, Jason Williams, White Chocolate.
He should be tier 2. He was tier 3. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. Number 3, Allen Iverson, The Answer. Number 2, Kyrie Irving.
Yep. Here comes Pistol Pete.
Wait a minute. What's he going to be put higher than Kyrie Irving?
Guns up.
And number 1, Skip to my Lou, Rayford Austin.
Oh, disrespect to Pete.
You got to fire up Pistol Pete VHS.
Jeez.
God, Rayford
palm the
Austin.
ball. I mean,
skip to my Lou. We will get it at the end there, Greg Cody, from you. Number 1 handles of all time. But let's update some polls first here for us, Juju.
Yes, sir. And while I grab the polls, Billy, I got a little something for you. Chelly is allowed to be angry, but she should be a little bit more angry at herself from Love Island because Coco was very good. He eliminated Coco with thinking, you know what, this is going to bring me and Chelly together.
Ready to close things off, it looked like.
Exactly. And as soon as he let her back in, she said, oh, I want to keep things open with Chris, the 6'8" stallion. Mm-hmm. And now he's in love with Huda, but Huda did take it too far.
Hey, yo.
Neither here nor there. Does there need to be a match in order for there to be a rematch? 97% of the audience says yes, there does.
We're gonna have both.
So. Small brains. You got to think bigger.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Right. And the last poll: is it okay for you to say that you've taken a bigger crap than someone if you say respectfully at the end? 69% of the audience says, yes, you can.
Yeah, all right. What a victory.
Billy, always a man of the audience, a man of the people. Go ahead and finish us up here, Greg Cody. The number one, top one handle of all time when a handle's a nickname and not handling a basketball is?
The leather loop strap on a 1954 Chevrolet Bel Air.
Bit wordy.
I'm glad we waited for it. Couldn't come up with 5. When you got one that good,
it's great.
How can you come up with 4 more?
Played hurt, delivered a bar.